Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode. Today, I've got Bill Allen on the show. Bill began his career as a naval officer with 18 years of military experience. He discovered through the avenue of real estate that is his calling to lead others by helping them find their own success through network and accountability. Bill has done, man, like this guy, he's been a longtime friend. His mastermind changed my life. He's got amazing coaching programs. He raises money for real estate deals. This guy's just good at everything. I'm excited to talk with him today. Bill, what's up, dude? Welcome. How you been?
I've been good. So I'm not good at everything. That is definitely not true. And I probably get everything to like 70 or 80% of the way. So I never actually like put the cherry on top of anything, is from what I found in my background.
Well,
But
something
thank
that
you.
a lot of people may not know about you. I'll tell a quick story here. So in 2020, right before COVID hit, I was on a cruise with his mastermind program, and the cruise ended, and I was about to go to the airport to get my plane. And as I was checking in, I realized that I'd accidentally booked my return flight not like March 6th, but April 6th. And so literally my return flight was not going to happen that day. And I was telling a couple people that I was with about it, and they're like, you know, Bill lives where you live, and I know he's flying his own plane back. Why don't you ask him for a ride? And you gave me a ride back to Nashville in your own plane, dude. Like that was still one of the funnest trips that I remember in an airplane to this day.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah, I remember that flight. That was a lot of fun. We were parked like right next to the cruise terminal, and you sent me a message, or somebody did, and you're like, "Hey, my flight is yeah, I booked it on the wrong date." And so it was a fun trip. I'm glad. I love that. It's one of my favorite things to do is share that experience of aviation and flying, like, privately, with
Mhm.
other people that haven't done it before. And frankly, it's really everything. I like seeing things that I've done multiple times and have kind of become stale to me through somebody else's eyes for the first time. We go fishing down in Key West every year, and I bring somebody new that's never been fishing like that before with us, and like that fills me up more than me going down to catch fish that I've already caught before. So seeing somebody catch that first like big tuna for the first time, or a sailfish. And same thing with like flipping houses. I think that's why I love the coaching and mastermind community, because if I can help you build your company, or I can give you some advice, it's just like you being successful is almost, it really is. It makes me feel better than being successful. So I'm flying down to a mastermind in Tampa next week, and there's 4 people flying in here to Nashville that are going to go with me. I just put it up and said, "Hey, I fly myself to all these events. If you want to fly to Nashville and come with me, you can come. I don't really like flying alone, so you just jump in and we'll fly down to Tampa on my plane."
Yeah, that is super cool. Like you said, the ultimate freedom right there to be able to just got there. And guys, if you haven't done this before, like there's no airport security at all. You literally just walk straight in. I was blown away by how quick I was able to get on this airplane and take off. So that was super cool. For those listening that don't know you though, what's your backstory?
Yeah, I was, like you said, I was in the military. I was a Navy pilot. I went to Georgia Tech. I got a degree in engineering, and I just was like punching a clock, W-2 worker for the government for years. I was a helicopter and airplane pilot. I was a trainer in Pensacola, and I flew the Black Hawk, like Navy version of the Black Hawk. Most people know that term because of Black Hawk Down. Had a great time. I loved it, and I started kind of investing in real estate on the side. So bought a couple rental houses. I moved 18 times in 20 years in the military.
Hmm.
So that's a lot of houses to live in. So I rented until 2006, bought a condo in 2006, sold that thing in 2010, bought another house in 2009. I started watching the flipping TV shows. Like Armando Montalongo was like the first guy that I saw on TV, and down in Texas. And I was like hooked on that stuff. I started like binging YouTube videos, and I ripped out my whole bathroom in that house in 2009 in Pensacola, and bought the Home Depot 1, 2, 3 book and just tried to fix it up myself. And that big orange book, a lot of people probably remember that one. And I was like, huh, maybe this, I could do this. I rented that house out when I left. I went to England for a year, came back. I did another rental house, and rented that out. And then I flipped my first house in 2013. And my realtor just said, I was buying another rental house, and she said, you could fix this up and sell it and make some money. And she wanted a second commission. And I said, okay, we did. We fixed it up, and we made $43,000. Like, so I say we, it's like me and my wife. And that was half of my salary for the year. And then, so I did that in 2013. In 2014, I did one more. I moved to Pensacola, did another one, made 45,000, proved that it was a viable model and repeatable.
Mhm.
And then it was kind of off to the races. I joined the mastermind seven figure flipping then, and I did 67 houses in the next year. And then I did 135 the next year, 187 the year after that. And then we were doing like, upwards of 200 houses a year for years. I probably flipped and wholesaled over 1,000 houses at this point. My company, I mean, I wasn't involved in every single aspect of it, even from the start. Like the first one we ever did, I was flying airplanes at 18,000 feet with a G suit and oxygen mask on, pulling G's, being an instructor at Pensacola. I couldn't answer the phone. And so I hired a team in the beginning to do those 67. So almost every single one of those houses, except for the first two, I had, somebody else involved with me.
Mhm. Yeah, you seem to be very good at automating. As someone who's known you, gosh, I don't even know, like 6, 7 years now, you do a really good job of passing that threshold of being able to automate and create those systems and processes where, you notice a lot of people can't seem to move past that business operator stage for whatever it is, not being able to let go of a certain position or, not feeling confident about the business or the cash flow or the people that they hire to be able to take that next step. You've done housing, wholesaling. You've got a mastermind that trains people on how to wholesale and flip houses. You've got a mastermind that helps people create passive income through multifamily. You've got I think you've got a farmer's market too, dude. I mean, you're really good at creating these little systems and businesses that run themselves. I want to jump into that. What is it about you that you feel is different that allows you to pass that threshold of becoming a true business owner that owns something that can operate without you? Whereas other people seem to not be able to move past that business operator where they're just stuck being a cog in the wheel of their business.
So first of all, that's a great question. I don't know if anybody's ever asked it that way. And it made me really, as you were talking, it made me really think about how. So I immediately went to the fact that I'm an engineer and I like to understand how things work. And so I used to like take things apart. When I was a kid and I was getting my driver's license, my dad said, you can't get your driver's license until you understand how the internal combustion engine works and how the brake system works. And when you understand that, I'm going to teach you that, then you can you can drive the car. And I
Mhm,
was like, wait, what? Like I have to learn how the engine works. He's like, yeah, air comes in here, fuel comes in here. We talked about combustion, like all that stuff.
mhm,
And then, so from a very young age, I was kind of like fascinated by taking things apart, figuring out how they work and putting them back together. And when you mentioned the farm and a couple other things. So I'm going to go two different ways. One is like the what was holding me back from this, and then the how do I do that. So at the beginning, I was doing everything myself. Like I was doing one house a year, and I was starting a family. We had our first son. He was young at the time, like a few months old when I was doing this. Actually, my wife was pregnant on the first house we were flipping. And then I also was flying airplanes and helicopters all day. And so I wanted to live my life, I wanted to have my family. I wanted to make more money flipping houses on the side. And I was still having a full-time job the whole time that I was building that business. So I was doing it all myself, wanting more. And I had a mentor say, look, I don't know how you're going to do that. Like it was Andy McFarland. Andy says, hey, Bill, you want to do 12 houses this year? You did one last year. You struggled to do one. Your life was kind of miserable. You didn't have a lot of time. You were away from your family, just doing one house. How are you going to do 12 by yourself? And I was like, I don't know. You're the guy with the systems. You tell me. And what he said was, you got to bring on a team. And I was deathly afraid to hire someone because I thought that probably nobody could do it as well as me. Nobody would take the ownership and the responsibility and like really care about that. I was also afraid to pay somebody else, like be responsible for their family and their food on their table and all that
yeah.
stuff. So I just said, okay, I'm paying you a lot of money to give me advice. You gave me the advice. I'm just going to do it. So I went out and hired that first person. And that first person really helped me. She was on the phone when I was flying. She was setting appointments for me. She was messing around in the CRM. She was setting things up. She was paying bills. She was turning on utilities. She was talking to contractors. She was running to Home Depot. She was doing basically a catch-all of everything that I would have been doing had I been at the office. And what I
Mhm,
realized is with 100% of me, and even if she was only like 60% as good as me, we now have 160% of me working. And that was making moves and seeing progress when I wasn't around, when I wasn't working. So that was the belief that had to shift in my head. And the
mhm,
second piece is when I think about how do we do these things. So you mentioned the farm. So I have a farm and a farmer's market, and we'll do somewhere between 600 and 800K in revenue at that farm this year. Like it's crazy. It's like blown up, growing really big. It's really cool the impact that we can have in the community with this. But an example is I just had this idea. We sell beef there. So we have a partner who raises the cattle and he's a USDA butcher. And then I buy wholesale from him and I sell retail for the beef. And I have like inefficiency in the beef sales. Like there's just certain cuts that just don't sell like crazy. So I created a subscription box this year, but we've never done it before. So it was my idea. I had to kind of architect the whole thing. And what I did was I knew that I wasn't going to be there every single month to distribute this and build the process and all this stuff. But we're going to do 11 months. Once a month, you come and pick up your beef box. And so I had to do it for the first like 2 months. I did it myself. Like I sold it, I marketed it, I promoted it, I broke it down, and I built the system. And then what I did was I like videotaped exactly what I was doing and how the changes that I was making and how it's working. And I trained somebody else alongside of me for those 2 months of pickups because I
Mm-hmm.
know this month coming up in April, I'm not going to be there. And so Jessica, who runs the admin of my farm, I had her come on the Saturdays. I talked to her about how we were doing it. I let her in on it. I documented it all. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over to Jessica and I no longer have to touch the beef subscription box.
Mm-hmm.
And so but I had to build the system. So I think the difference is a lot of people want like somebody else to build the system for them or just like, hey, can you just tell me what it is? But I feel like everybody has their own little like process and tweak. So it's really easy. It's like, how do you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Like
Right.
Brandon, you probably make it very differently than I make it. And somebody else who's listening might make it different. Somebody puts like the peanut butter and the jelly on one piece of bread. Somebody uses two knives. Somebody else uses one knife. But like exactly that is everybody has like a little bit different way of doing it. And if you just wrote it down, like I could duplicate it. And so that's kind of the like belief that has to shift in us to understand that other people are way better at doing things than us most of the time.
Yeah.
And then, and even if they're not, 70% of you times two is better than you. So
Yeah.
that's like 1.5 of you and you. So now there's 2.5 of you. Of course, you're going to make more money and do more. And then the second piece is like, how do you do it? It really is. I like to, when there's new ideas, new strategy, that kind of stuff, I don't just say, hey, I want this done, go do it. It's like, all right, let's build it out. Let's stress test it. And then, okay, let's hand it off to somebody. And that doesn't go for everything. I don't get in the weeds on the little stuff in the company, but something new, something brand new, when I build something new like that, I'm usually involved in it.
Yeah, the two big things you said right there. So one, you started yourself, you figured out what the kinks were, you created SOPs, standard operating procedures, you recorded it, wrote it down in some way, shape, or form where you didn't have to necessarily hold somebody's hand, though you did in this position with the meat business, but something that somebody could go to and say, hey, here's how to make this PBJ sandwich, how Bill does it. The second thing you said was you were able to get rid of some limiting beliefs that you needed to fill that role. I definitely share that. I remember I came from medical device sales and I was good at sales. And so I was running acquisitions in my company. And I did that for 4 or 5 years. And it was a limiting belief. I was so scared to let go of that position because that sales, that top part of the funnel that was driving in business, it was bringing revenue. You needed to have an all-star there. And it wasn't until I was able to find someone who was even better than me at that role, which I think my ego might have even been a little bit involved at this point, thinking, oh, no one's going to do this better than me. That's when I was able to work on the more higher dollar per activities that sales wouldn't offer me. But there's a next level to this. There's plenty of people who've owned businesses out there, small businesses especially, that have hired people, but their business is not running efficiently. It's not running smoothly. And I know that you've got some stories here that center around, some systems and processes, accountability. I know that you brought in a COO at one point who created this accountability and it was a complete game changer. What are some of the mechanics that take the business from a just running to like a well-oiled machine?
Yeah, before I answer that, I just want to go back real quick. You said something that you were really, really good at, which was acquisitions. And something that I was really, really good at was like the data, the tracking, the numbers, even business to business sales. I wasn't good at really that great at business to customer sales, but B2B sales, really good. So I just say, as you start like offloading tasks for you, you should be getting rid of the things that you're the best in the world at last. So like hold those things. So if you were building a company, Brandon, I would be like, hey, start giving up the stuff like the monotonous tasks, some of the admin things, whatever drives you nuts, whatever you're not really good at. and then hold on to that acquisitions role until you're ready to offload that, because that is probably what could be one of the most important things, and the most value that you can bring to the company to get the most dollar per hour out of it. And so same thing for me. Like the last thing I gave up was the marketing, the data. Then when I hired the COO, I was like, okay, I remember like, okay, the list that we're pulling, the KPIs, the metrics, the data, the turning the wheels. This is the most important thing in the business. Like you got to make sure that you focus on this, and found somebody that could handle that and gave that up last. So as far as like transitioning from kind of like a mom and pop or one man or woman show, or like really to try to really shift some things that really changed the game for me. One was to work off of some sort of operating system. So if and we used EOS in the beginning, so entrepreneurial operating system. We used that in the beginning, and then we kind of adapted a little bit because I feel like there's some limitations as you get bigger in finance and marketing, where there's some gaps and holes in that system. And so we fortified that with another consultant that came in with us. But we implemented it on our own in the beginning, and then when we brought somebody in, that was even another kind of level up to have a third party that's coming in that's has no idea even of what our business was. They just understand business, because it doesn't really matter what your widget is. There's marketing, sales, there's operations and finance in any company. And then the next piece for me was personality profile surveys. So really understanding the traits and characteristics of the human beings that are operating inside of our company, and what really lights them up and fills them up and gets them excited, and how they act when they're in stress and crisis mode. Because you can turn yourself inside out for a while, but you're going to get burned out. You're going to get, and anytime you're under stress, you're going to go back to your natural tendencies, natural characteristics, and that's who shows up. And that's the time where we want our people to be on point in the areas that they are. So if they're not detailed and they're in a detailed position, and they're normally working very detailed, but when they're under stress and everything's going wrong and they miss something, where if you're an accountant, you miss some numbers, you send the wrong wire, like who knows what could happen, could be catastrophic. So that was another piece. And then the next one is probably a peer-to-peer network, and then also getting around a lot of like-minded people. So like having a coach, which would be my business consultant, and then also getting around like a mastermind or a peer-to-peer network. So those are the things that I think really like just drove things up for me. And inside that operating system is a lot of like accountability, key performance indicators, goals, metrics, those kind of things, like meeting cadences and meeting pulses. So inside of that, like that sounds like a really easy answer, but there's a lot of things that are getting developed as a real business. I mean, setting a 10-year target, like a really long-term vision of where you want to go, setting short-term goals, looking at like weekly type numbers and accountability, having the right meetings and not wasting time and being on an agenda. Like all that stuff is inside of there that I think is really valuable when you become a real company. And I still feel like we're a couple guys and gals in a garage sometimes. Like I don't actually feel like I'm on par with some of these larger companies, but I will tell you, a lot of times our net profits are a lot higher than theirs per capita, per top line revenue. So I'm really happy with what we're doing. I think we do have a little bit more of a laid back culture and vibe, but I would like to think that I'm running a somewhat professional organization. So
Yeah, you said a lot there. And the whole EOS thing, the entrepreneur operating system, popularized by Gino Wickman. He's got a great book, Traction, another great book called Get a Grip, if you want like the fable version that tells a story and
yeah.
keeps you captivated and teaches the concepts. Very popular in the entrepreneur community. You said that you had made some adjustments to that. What were those adjustments?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different operating systems. So the challenge with EOS that I have over a long period of time of using it, I've used it for probably close to 7 years now,
Hmm.
is as we grow, I think it's really good if you're under, 5 million, 10 million in revenue, right around there. But as you grow, you start seeing some limitations. And the company got sold a couple times. Gino sold it once, and then it got sold again. And so when that happened, a lot of the really good EOS implementers, there was a document, it became a franchise, and there was a document that they had to sign that basically said anything that I teach in this meeting becomes property of EOS. And so a lot of these guys didn't want to sign that. And so there was a group that got formed recently called Pinnacle. So Pinnacle Guides was kind of created and spawned from people from there. But what they did was they took a lot of the best practices from all these different areas. So there's like Rockefeller Habits in Scaling Up, Vern Harnish's book, and you've got multiple operating systems that people use. So there's some sort of business operating system that they're using. What they did was they took a lot of the stuff that they've learned from all of these different areas, brought in multiple people that were consultants from all these areas, and tried to create something that was a little bit more robust as you started to grow and scale a business from, up to 1 million, and then 5 million and 10 million, 20 million, 100 million. And what I found really for me is marketing and sales, I think, is a weakness. In EOS, there's a marketing, there's like your marketing message, and then your kind of 3 uniques or number of uniques in there.
Mhm.
And that's really the marketing piece of that system. And there's some KPIs and indicators on there. But I think there's a lot more that goes into marketing. I think there's a lot more that goes into finance that isn't really have a ton of tools inside of EOS that people need as they go bigger, which is a lot like pulling money out, cash flow, building your own network worth as an entrepreneur and a business owner, and actually pulling money out of your business and how to do those things. And I think that's really, that's some of the areas where I wanted to fortify that. I thought we were falling short, and I felt like we were operating really, really well on EOS, but we kind of like hit a ceiling, which is
Mhm.
like his term, right? Gino's term, like hit the ceiling. And we wanted to bust through that ceiling. And I felt like the only way to do it was to kind of like expand the operating system a bit. So I have
Gotcha.
nothing against EOS. Like I think it's a great system. I do think, and they a lot of times they talk to it, when you get to a point inside of there, really they serve entrepreneurs like under 10 million.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
once you get
Smaller
to that
businesses.
point, yeah, once you get to that point, you just need a next level system, in my opinion.
So, speaking to the key performance indicators and creating accountability, when you're growing an organization, that is a huge part of making sure a position is successful. Because if you can't define success, well, how does that position know if it's doing its job? And more importantly, how do you know whether it's time to let somebody go or not? So there's got to be clear metrics that the position can stand up to, because that's what rock stars want. Like A+ rock stars, they want to be measured and they want to know when they're winning, right? How do you go about creating those key performance indicators for, let's say, like it's a new position that you're bringing on in the company as you're growing? Because a lot of
Yeah,
people struggle with this. I've struggled with this.
yeah, for sure. I mean, so right now we're growing a software business. So I have this business called In the Room. It's a live event software company. It's does like check-in, registration, tracking. So like you walk up to an iPad. We did ClickFunnels event, Funnel Hacking Live last year. You walk up to the iPad, you check in, it prints out your badge there, print on demand. We track people for metrics and stuff like that for the host. We have like in-app upsells, all this kind of stuff, right? All revolutionary technology that we're trying to bring to the market. So I have 4 people in the company. I have myself, I have my partner, and I'm really like the operator of the company. And then I've got a software developer, and I brought in a salesperson. And I think the best example is like, we didn't know, like I was doing all the selling. So what I was doing is I was posting on social media, reaching out to my network, people that I know that run live events, and talking to them about the product, right? Doing demos, having calls. And I wanted to offload that to somebody else. It was like, oh, gosh, I'm like on all these calls all the time. I got to make the posts. I got to follow up with these people. We got to schedule the calls and do the demos. And I wanted somebody to come in. And I was like, okay, she's going to come in and she's going to do all the sales. And then eventually we're going to need, I know what's next. So like once we do a bunch of sales, we're going to need somebody to support the clients that come in, right? And so I have no idea what kind of metrics we can see on sales. Like I don't know. It's brand new. I was like, I don't know. I think I could probably make like 50 or 60K in sales a month just by, posting and getting on calls. That should be somewhat easy for me as long as I could build a pipeline. So I set that metric for her, right? Like, okay, 60K a month, like sell 60K a month. And they're like, between $10,000 and $20,000 a year packages for the software or like anywhere between 5 and 15K for one-time events. So I'm like, all right, four 15K one-time events a month shouldn't be that hard. And especially because she can go cold message people, get on LinkedIn, go on
Yeah.
Facebook, just basically find every single event all over the country that's doing a live event right now. Event planners, get in those groups. And what we found is just she was getting like ghosted. Like nobody was answering, nobody knew who she was. Like we didn't have a platform. We were still building our website. There wasn't a lot of credibility. And it was kind of easy for me because people knew who I was. They would get on a call with me. They'd listen. They know I'm in the live event space. And we do like 50 live events last year, like, that kind of stuff. So it was easy. And so we just had to dial it in together. And I, I think the biggest lesson that I learned in this is there's like these stretch goals that we think that we can do that are very easy, but haven't been proven at all.
Mm.
And so really what has to happen is you have to have like, what's the best case scenario? What am I willing to accept? And how long do we think it's going to take before we can get up to those kind of KPIs and metrics that will be producing the results that we need? Like, what's the run rate that we're genuinely willing to let somebody go for? And so, because I was getting frustrated after like a week or 2 weeks, I'm like, you haven't made a sale yet. What's happening? Like, why are you not making sales? We need sales. I need money for the company, right? And so we set that metric, but we really had to get back together every week to say, how are things going?
Mm-hmm.
Because we talked about the results. Like if our metric is $60,000, the result is 4 sales at 15K. However, what we really need to track is the activity that's happening. So then we
Inputs.
got to the point. Yeah, absolutely. The lead metrics. So that money is a lag metric, right? It's after the fact. I want the lead metric. Like what's the activity that's going to produce that kind of result? And so then we got to the place of, okay, to produce 60K, we got to work it back and say, you got to talk to 100 people a week. You got to send 100 messages a week. And so then after that week, it was like, oh, we're still not getting any traction. Are those messages being read? Who are you actually getting in front of? Do they even see it? And maybe we have the wrong avatar. And so then we just have to keep dialing it in. So you asked me about like a new position. And so what I would say to anybody who's creating this is create something of like what you think would be great. And then go do it for like a week together or two, like, and every week come back together and say, what's going on? Was it their performance? Was it their work ethic? Was it their ability? Or was it just the fact that we set a goal so high that nobody's going to achieve this, not even you?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then you just keep dialing it in and dialing it in and dialing it in. And if you are working that closely with somebody, you're going to realize if they're the right fit or not. Because I think what we try to do, especially as visionaries, entrepreneurs, like leaders, CEOs, those kind of things, we just like, we'll put somebody there and be like, okay, go do it. Let me know when it's done. And
Yeah.
we're not involved in the training. We're not holding them accountable. We're not helping them fix the problem. I mean, if they could do it all by themselves, they would be. Like they would already be doing it. They'd be running their own company. But no, they work for you. They're W-2 employees, 1099 contractors. They're fine, working a job. They're not fine taking the responsibility that you are. So that's my biggest piece of advice is you never really know. You kind of constantly have to dial it in. But the way that you do that is you have to be intimately involved in it. And you have to realize that when you hire somebody and you're training them and you're onboarding them and you're building out those KPIs, you're going to be doing your job and spending time there training them. So your capacity to do other things is going to go down and your workload is going to go up for a short period of time, but it's totally worth it for the long term. So I hope I answered your question. I think that you have to really, it's kind of like trial and error on the KPIs, unless there's somebody else who has already modeled it and created it that you can basically like grab it from. They'll share it with you and they'll say, hey, this is what's working really well for us. These are the metrics that should be hit. This is what a good sales rep looks like. And I just don't have, I don't have anybody else's software company that I know of to model it right now, especially as we build something from scratch. So those are the two ways that I would look at.
Yeah, that was one of the shortcuts that we kind of realized. It was changing the idea from hiring bottom up to top down. Right now, we're strictly focused on hiring strategic partners. If that person can't come in and actually teach us something about the position that we didn't know and like show us how to run it, like I hired a controller and I had, had like our SOPs for this position, but I go, what, I want, before I want you to build out the SOPs. And I compared his and mine. I was like, oh my God, this is the dude, because he just blew away what I had. Obviously, he knows more than I do. But I love what you said is it is a work in progress. Unless you can find that perfect fit, or it's a brand new position, or it's a brand new company that you've never done before, you're going to have to be involved at the get-go to kind of create some of those inputs, like you said. You know what the outputs are. And I think that's what a lot of people mistakenly do is they, oh, I got this person, I hired them. Here you go. Here's what we need to go do. And then you get frustrated and fire them, or they're not performing because you didn't give them the right inputs. Let's talk about some Hormozi advice here, because I know you're a Hormozi fan. So he talks a lot about entrepreneurs making the mistake of starting multiple businesses, right? Your business is like this bleeding bucket and you've only got two arms and two legs, and you just got more holes bleeding than you know what to do with. And so you got to figure out what's going to bleed. And he talks about how most guys, if they had just started with one thing and just done one thing, they would have really blown it up and done well. Now, you've got like 6 or 7 different businesses. I mean, what are your thoughts on that advice? Because if you just poured all your time and effort from, doing like the farmer's market or the, software business and just picked one, do you not feel like you could really blow that business up? Or is there something that maybe we're not seeing here?
Yeah, so I totally agree with that advice. I agree with that advice. I think you should all take it. I also think that there's something at least in my life, that I like to build stuff, like, and I think a lot of people do, but I
Mhm.
also I like to live my life by choice, which I think he also does. So like he chooses to work all the time. He chooses not to have kids. He chooses to live in Las Vegas in a high rise and eat out every single meal. And it's like, that's not my life. Like 3 years ago, the reason why I built something in my backyard in a farmer's market and a farm was because I wanted to eat food that was in my backyard that we grew. And I
Mhm.
didn't know how to do that. And then I was like, oh, how can I figure out how to fund that? Because I really don't want to like just have a vegetable garden on my own that's 1 acre that I have to deal with. I can't do that. So how can I build something that also helps the community and helps other people? And it kind of just like snowballed and turned into what it is now. It was not, I had no desire to create, I didn't even plan on creating a farmer's market. It just kind of happened. It was just like there was a need, and so we did. And then it was like I didn't plan on carrying beef, but I met a guy and he was like, could you do that? And I was like, yeah, that wouldn't be that hard for us to add that in. And so I think some of the things like that feeds my soul. So like that's not a profit center for me. I've actually lost money in that the past few years. And he's right. Like that farm is costing me money. But I can tell you right now, it's feeding my soul, it's feeding my relationships, it's feeding my kids, like not just like real food, but spiritually as well. My
Mhm.
kids are they have 13 acres behind our house to play on, and we live in a neighborhood of half-acre cookie cutter houses with an HOA. So like they get to go in the backyard, and it opens up a whole different world, like their little farming Narnia back there, that they can go pretend, they can play, they can be soldiers. They have a little fort back there. They said they were building a
Yeah.
water park on the dirt pile that was back there in my little kids. It was just so cool to watch. And so are the neighborhood kids, the community. It's really cool. And so that's something that, I just kind of like fell into. And yeah, I totally agree. If I didn't have that going on, I could spend, I could spend 18 hours a day in my business if I wanted to,
Yeah.
but I don't. And I enjoy it. So I'm going to set up my life, and I'm going to set up my businesses, and I'm going to set up kind of the things that I say yes to, in the areas that I enjoy doing, that really fill me up, so spiritually, emotionally, physically, uh, monetarily. But
Mhm.
I think it's great advice. I think it really is great advice. And I totally agree with it. Like if I know that if I spent 100% of my time on that farm, I would make more money than I make. If I spent 100% of my time on 7-figure flipping, I would make more money. If I spent
Mhm.
100% of my time just focused on the software business, I would make a ton more money. But the software basically was built because I needed it inside 7-figure flipping. And now we're like, you know what? We could offer this to other people, and I love it. Like I love bolting on to somebody else's business almost more than building my own.
Mhm.
So I totally agree with him. I agree with him, and I'm just like, okay, that's great advice. I'm just at a point in my life where I listen to it. It tugs on me a little bit, but man, there's a few things that I'm just enjoying doing right now, like
Yeah.
really
It's a lot
enjoying
of fun.
doing. And it's if my life was all about making like billions and billions of dollars, and that's how I measure myself, then yeah, I think it's great advice. But I mean, I got 3 kids that are going to look to me one day and be like, Dad, what'd you do? And I'm like, you know what? I was able to like help and serve all these different people in all these different places. And yeah, sometimes people are like, you're got a lot going on. Really, what I try to do is I try to build it up to about 70 or 80% and then put somebody in place that runs it and helps grow it. And then that's kind of my method. But
Yeah.
I
It's
don't know that
not,
I
it's,
have a really great answer for you. I think that he's right. I could be making a lot more money, but I'm also really happy. I'm enjoying a lot of that stuff. And
no,
I
you,
like
you said a lot there.
Saturdays.
It's
Selling
not
an
just
$8
about
block of
ROI.
cheese on Saturday, man, is like one of my favorite things to do. I'd rather add on an $8 block of cheese to your beef order on a Saturday sometimes than sell a $25,000 coaching program. I
Yeah,
think that's
it's not all about your ROI on your business. It's about getting an ROI on life, and that's honestly your ROI on business is so that you can pursue the ROI on life and go and pursue the things that really truly give you fulfillment. And it's not all about money. You mentioned how you spend your time is really really important. I'm curious. As somebody who's in this seat, true business owner over here, multiple businesses. What are some of those high level tasks that you're really focused on? Like, sort of like what does a day in the life of look like? What does a week in the life of look like? High level.
Yeah, so like right now, the week is like I try to work Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, I try to be at my farm on Friday and Saturday, and Sunday I'm at church and with my family and those kind of things. And then Monday through Thursday, I try to work like to like 10 a.m. to like 5 p.m. And I just try to get as much done as I can in that period of time and be really efficient. So I'd rather be really efficient, focused, like laser focused on what I'm doing, knocking those things out. And that right now, where I am, I feel like for seven figure flipping, I'm like the head recruiter. I am raising money for a bunch of deals. Like I'll never say no to money, right? We've got apartments, we got single family houses, basically anything. If somebody wants monthly payments, if they want net worth growth, all that stuff. I have somewhere things that we do inside the companies that can place that. And then, the farm, I'm pretty much doing that same thing. I'm like head recruiter there. I'm trying to promote it. I'm trying to attract people there. Same thing for the software company, head recruiter. So basically, my job is to go out there and just talk and share stories and tell stories and get people interested. So I spend almost all of my time like either making a video, making an ad, doing a show like this, doing my show, like whatever it is, just creating something that can live for a long period of time to get people to know and trust me and one of my companies. That's really my job. So if I'm spending any time that's not creating something that is going to be a long-term tool that we're using for the business, then I'm probably in the wrong meeting. I try not to be on a ton of meetings. I try only to be in places where we're talking about really big things, game-changing type stuff. And I probably say no to way more stuff than I say yes to. Well, I say yes to everything, but Jennifer staring at me behind the camera, her job is to say no to as much stuff as possible. So I don't say yes to everything.
So it sounds like you spend a ton of time on media leverage. You're trying to grow a following. I know there's a big push there.
Yep.
Recruiting. You said you spend a lot of times creating the right ads, telling the right stories, building the brand. So a lot of high level stuff that's going to get more eyeballs for the business. And then, like you said, the people. Sounds like, for these organizations, you're the main guy who's filtering who comes in, who comes out to make sure that it's a right fit and that you keep the machine well oiled.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like I'm casting the vision, coming up with some ideas, usually too many ideas, and then somebody's there to filter them down and say, okay, we're going to actually do this one. But I mean, if I'm in like operational day-to-day meetings, we're wasting time, money, effort, energy, potential, opportunity, all that stuff. So yeah, media is right now, yes. And I think I slept on that a little bit the past few years. I was hoping that paid ads would drive everything. My marketing team could take care of it, and then I could, do other things. But I know you got to build trust. Like, and the leader is that head recruiter is really important, regardless of where you are. If you're the CEO, you really are the head recruiter for staff, for clients, for customers, for everything. Like that's the name of the game. You're the voice, you're the face, you're the mission, you're the vision, you're all that stuff. So
Yeah, love it, man. Well, if people want to learn more about you, your coaching programs, your investment opportunities, your channels, where should they go?
well, we have a podcast called Seven Figure Flipping. So I know that you've been on the show before. We've had a lot of our members on the show, and then I've got a YouTube channel and Instagram is where I spend a lot of time now. So both of those are at Bill Allen REI, and that's like my personal channel. I fly around my airplane, interview people from the cockpit now, and have fun making videos there. So I bought an airplane. And I'm trying to figure out how to pay for it. I took. It's not the one you flew in. We took a step up since then, and it's a little bit more expensive and I got to figure out how to pay for it. So I was like, well, hey, I could write it off on my taxes and just
Yeah,
shoot some videos in there. And now it's a total business asset. So
I've seen the pictures, man. I mean, hey, it's a write off, dude. Get that loan, write it all off. That's a beautiful
totally.
airplane too. I'm gonna have to figure out a way. Maybe there's another cruise or something I'll miss at some point and get the ride in it.
Yes, you need to do that. You for sure. Yeah.
Well, dude, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes shared. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Yeah, was fun. Hey, if you got value from this episode, please do us a favor, leave us some reviews and share this with your friends and family. We'll see you guys next time.